Hello everyone and welcome back. Behind me is a 93 Mazda B2200. Actually, I think it's a 93. This is a friend of mine's truck, and the story with this is he bought it quite a few years ago, was interested in putting an LS in it. So 3 years ago, he dropped it off. I put the 5.3 in it and got the engine mounts made, as well as I did the harness on it. I do the harness a little bit differently now than what you'll see on this one, but that was 3 years ago. So then 2 years ago, we pulled the motor out. He brought it to machine shop and tore it down, went totally through the thing, and got the block cleaned up, the heads, all that stuff done. And I built the motor in its garage and dropped it back in the truck. And then last year, we got the transmission fitted to the engine, and we put the Ford 8.8 rear axle in it. It's out of a Ford Explorer here. And that's pretty much where he was left off. He's poked around, did a little bit of stuff at his house. He had a friend of his paint it, which turned out awesome. He also, in the meantime, picked up these wheels off of Fox Body. The fronts aren't on it, still has the Explorer wheels on the front. I guess the tires were in rough shape, so he's getting new ones of those. But behind me is some boxes of parts. There's more stuff up in the front of the truck. And we are going to build the turbo kit on this. So he has bought a Turbonetics 7868 turbo, the Hurricane Bonita, I think they call it. And we're going to have to get a parts list together here of the couple other things we need, and then we're going to walk through fabbing the turbo kit on this. So stay tuned. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, because this one's going to be fun. Okay, so we got 5.3 here. You can see kind of harness kind of balled up the side. So I mean, I do them a little differently now than the fuse box and relays that are sitting over there. But got the computer mounted, and we've got to get the turbo and exhaust piping figured out. So the other day I was over to his garage, and what we kind of figured out was we're going to run a truck manifold on this side and dump the exhaust down under the front of the pan. Back up here we have a Camaro, 4th gen Camaro manifold for this side, and we're going to join it together and put turbo approximately here, and then run the downpipe up and then down between the firewall and the manifold. So the first step we're going to have to do is, we've got the Camaro manifold, the flange cut off from it. I did that the other day at his place while we were kind of mocking everything up. But he went ahead and bought a brand new Dorman truck manifold. So I'm going to get the heat shield off this, get it in place to figure out where we're going to have to cut it, and then go ahead and cut this flange off. And then at that point, we'll be able to get an idea about where we're going to start mocking stuff up from there. All right, so this is already hitting pretty badly on the steering box. So I think what I'm going to do is we go ahead and cut it off right here at the merge, and then that'll help us get a better idea of how things are going to fit. All right, so we got this end cut off. Let's see what we look like now. Definitely a lot better. Now there's no gasket in here, so before we do any like final building and fitting, you're going to do it with gaskets in place, because it sounds silly. And like this gasket, this one's pretty thin, but some of like the Felpro ones and the like the graphite like China ones that come with like the $80-$100 headers, you know, those ones are pretty thick, so you want to make up for that material thickness because it's going to spread apart on both sides. But anyways, this didn't look too bad. When it comes time to do it for good, I may end up cutting this at a little bit more of a flat angle here, just so that it doesn't kick towards the box as bad. We've got a lot of clearance, and as long as I can get 2 AN fittings in here for the power steering hose, that's not a big deal. But let me grab some tube and we'll start trying to figure out what tubing we're going to need to go down and under the engine. Alright, so I got a piece of 2.5 inch 90 here. This is 409 stainless. This is from a Summit Racing exhaust builder's kit. If you're looking for stainless pipe, you pretty much have the option of 409 or 304. 304 probably has a little better longevity long term as far as like corrosion resistance and stuff, but it's also quite a bit more expensive. And this kit, believe it or not, from Summit is $259.99. Now that's January of 2023, so depending on when you see this, the pricing may change a little bit, but that's 490s, 4 180s, 4 45s, and 4 4-foot chunks. So it's actually a pretty good option, and these are just some scrap chunks I have left over from several of these kits throughout the years, including the S10, like you saw in my last video. But so if I cut this a little more flat, a 90 right here is going to get us down under the front of the pan, and then I might need like a 45, or maybe just do some pie cuts with a straight. And then same thing here. Again, maybe a 45 possibly to start coming back up. I'm going to go ahead and get the Camaro manifold on this side now, and we will see about how our merge is going to look. Alright, just pop the dipstick out of there. So let's hang this in place. Again, this is another brand new Dorman cast iron manifold. This one's for a 4th gen Camaro. Snug that down a little bit. We've got this 180 here. I'd be able to kind of cut this and get them to merge together as they come up here. If I remember right, all we'll have over here is our tensioner, and then on the far side, the driver's side of the motor, we're going to get an ICT billet bracket that has the power steering and the alternator over there. So everything's going to be pretty open over here, but I think one last step, I'll get the water pump installed, just to make sure we don't have any clearance issues around our water neck outlets for the heater core. Alright, so we got our new AC Delco water pump on here, and I know I changed the camera angle a little bit, but you can see now that we don't have quite as much room, right? I mean, we've cut into our area for our heater core outlets a little bit, you know, so we're gonna have to make sure that our merge is kind of up here and as forward as we can get to get away from our elbow here. A little bit of a concern is making sure that we have enough room to get hoses on here without burning them on the exhaust. But if we need to, I can always rather pull these steel inserts out of the water pump and weld AN ones to them, or, you know, aluminum bungs right to the water pump itself, or they do make the steel bungs. We can cut these off and then weld them on a little further out here, and then just put like a 180 or something, you know, or a 120 fitting. The water neck, or the heater core hoses, are actually kind of back here on the firewall on this, so a little bit different routing, where it may actually be convenient for them to kind of come up and over the intake manifold to go into the firewall up there, which is good because we're going to have a lot of hot stuff over here from the turbo. So I am going to grab the engine crane, I think now, and sling the turbo up here and try to get a rough idea of where that's going to sit, as well as our wastegate. Okay, so all I've got going on here is I just rolled the engine crane over here, which, let's be honest, if you're doing a project like this, you probably own an engine crane. And since this is good to do if you are by yourself, which I'm not currently, but my brother's busy over there welding up his turbo kit. So, you know, using an engine crane or some sort of support. I've even seen, like, on I watch a bunch of the Rob Dom videos, and Rob and his boy Isaiah will put like a support across the fenders, you know, to hold turbo up. Anything you can do, you know, to make it more stable, especially when it comes time to actually do your fitting and getting all your tubing together. So, anyways, this is just, again, a real simple way to hold the turbo. So, I'm thinking it's probably going to have to come a little lower than that. That's going to be up into our hood. Alright, something like that. Now, the customer here, he's not crazy worried about having a filter on the front of this. He's going to just run like one of the screen type filters, so we don't have to be super worried about how close it is to the front rad support. But it does need to stay out of this inner fender. He does not want to hurt the inner fenders in any way. So this really might not be a bad way to go right here. We may end up putting some gold foil tape on the hood just because the turbine housing is pretty close, and I'll see quite a bit of heat. And we kind of played with this the other day at his house, trying to figure out where this is going to fit, and we kind of had already turned the compressor and the turbine housings to get them pointed where they need to be. But yeah, this is going to work pretty well right here. Now, one thing that is going to be kind of a bit of a pain is the wastegate. We got to have room for that, and it has to be in the merge between both banks of cylinders, or you can run two separate gates, one on each side. But in this case, we're just going to run one single 60, and so our merge, I can figure, is probably going to be in around here, pretty much level with the water outlets. So we're probably going to have about 8 inches of pipe or so before the turbo flange. So let me go grab the wastegate and get a rough idea where that's going to sit. Okay, so now I've got our Black Sheep Industries wastegate over here, and I'm not going to lie, this one's a little bigger than I would love, especially on a 5.3, only because packaging starts to get a little tight here, but it probably will fit here. It might not be too bad of an idea just to go here with it, because then so on a wastegate, if you're not familiar, what it does is it's designed to bypass exhaust gas from the engine around the turbo, which in turn would slow down the turbo, which reduces your boost, right? So the spring that's in here is set to regulate to a certain boost pressure. And so you want this side to be in the flow, exhaust flow, as much as possible, so that the exhaust flows through the wastegate pretty evenly and efficiently. If you have kind of an inadequate exhaust flow through the wastegate, or too small of a wastegate, whatever, you can actually end up with boost creep. I'm sure you've heard the term on that. Just meaning that, you know, say if you command like 7 or 8 pounds, you might get your 8 pounds, and then the wastegate opens and it starts bypassing exhaust around it. but it's not bypassing enough, and now you're at 10 pounds, 12 pounds. By the end of the pull, you're at 14 pounds of boost, and so we're gonna try to avoid boost creep, and this big 60mm gate should do that. So there's two ways to run a wastegate. As far as the exhaust side of it goes, you can rather dump this straight out. People will call them screamer pipes because turbos make a pretty good muffler. So your exhaust won't be crazy loud, but when the wastegate opens, that is straight header exhaust pretty much coming out of there. No sort of manifold or anything, or muffler at all. So it's pretty loud. We're going to route this back into the downpipe so that it can actually be muffled, since his wife doesn't want it extremely loud. So I'm really thinking somewhere in here. Then we'll have the option to run like a 90 or 45 or whatever up out of the gate and tie back into the exhaust back in here. When you do that, you want to make sure that you get bellows, they're called. So your exhaust is going to grow and shrink as it heats up, because metal expands and contracts with temperature. And so for this, because we're going to have, this heavy piece off to the side, the turbos here, downpipes here, everything's going to be growing and moving and stuff. When we have to get the pipe for this, which this one I believe is 2 1/4 inch, we're going to make sure we get a 2 1/4 inch bellow to go with it, just so it's got room to expand and contract. We already have the 3 inch for the downpipe, but it looks like we're also going to have to get a 2 1/2 for our crossover too. Again, just like I said earlier with the gaskets on here, that the width will change. Well, the width will also change as the block grows, the head will grow, the exhaust itself, everything will move as it warms up. But this is looking pretty good. So anyways, now I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get just a rough inventory on what we're going to need for pipe. And I'm going to sit down on the Summit Racing site here and get a shopping cart put together. Okay, so we're about a week later here since the last clip, and we were waiting for a few parts, including those V-bands. So I am on my way back over to the oven here. I'm going to place it. I had the oven on preheat at 400 degrees. Maybe I should have cleaned these a little better before putting them in here. But anyways, oop, that's hot. So, welding V-band flanges to cast iron. So what we're doing here is preheat these to 400 degrees. We get them warm. And they are certainly warm. Okay. Whew. So we're preheating the cast iron so that it helps resist cracking. Now, I'm sure there's a chance of cracking. It is a Dorman manifold. However, we're doing everything we can to help prevent it. So we got it on the vehicle, got it fitted, got everything sanded, tossed it in the oven. Probably should have wiped it down with isopropyl alcohol or something first to clean it so it wouldn't smoke like this, but it's clean now. So I'm gonna go grab our other V-band and weld this one on. All right, and back to the oven we go. Okay, so like I said here, the oven's set on, well, I guess it's about 375. But anyways, we're going to let this sit for about another 10 minutes or so, get back preheated back, warmed back up to where they should be. And then we're going to just turn the oven off and walk away. And then that's going to allow them to slowly cool down, again, to help resist cracking. And then they should be good to go. All right, so I got the flashlight here just for a little better light. So now that the manifolds have cooled down and the V-bands are welded on, I'm gonna start building the pipe that is gonna connect the two sides across. So before we do, like I mentioned before, make sure you have your gasket in there when it's bolted down, because that's going to change the distance between the two manifold sides. And even though we're going to have a flex bellow in here, you know, you want to get everything as close as possible to how it's actually going to be set up. So we've got all the bolts in and the manifold tight with the gasket. So first step first is going to be this 90 here. I've actually got to cut a little tighter than that. It's about 100 degrees or so. And these Summit V-bands, when you're buying a V-band, you want to look for ones that not only have the flange to help center them up, but also it's a lot nicer to weld when, especially if you're doing it by yourself or whatever, and you're trying to get everything centered up, if they've got that little lip machined in them, so that your pipe fits perfectly, or the V-band fits perfect right on your pipe. See, it centers itself up nice there. And so I'm gonna go burn this on. I'm gonna start with that, and then probably end up putting the truck in the air and continuing across the bottom. Once we get a little ways across the bottom, we will do our tight 180 on this, get our merge pipe together, and start heading up to the turbo. Okay, so now that the hot side piping is all fully welded here, went ahead and reinstalled the turbo. I still kind of need to clock the center section a little bit, but I want to get the wastegate done next. But to do that, I decided to get the first couple of our 45s on here for the downpipe. And the reason for that is I want to try to figure out where I'm going to point the wastegate to. I do think we're going to have room to angle it just a little bit. So what I've got actually here is, no, I don't know where I set it. But I got a piece of 2.5 inch pipe that I just kind of cut on an angle. So I'm going to get that cut to the right height and radius for our 3-inch pipe here. And then what I'll do is I'll hold it in place, or probably tack it in place, trace the inside with the Sharpie, and then break it back off, plasma cut the inside out, then I'm gonna weld everything back up. Okay, so now what I just did was I went ahead and notched the piece here that's going to tie the wastegate into our merge pipe, and I welded it to the V-band. It was a lot easier to do while that was on the bench. Then I just took it off, and well, I take that back. I had it mounted to the gate, set the gate on here, and then we just put one tack in it. So now I have access to the inside. So what I'm gonna do is take the Sharpie, mark the inside of this, break the tack off, and then plasma cut this out, and then we should have a nice smooth hole for it to fit. I might need to take the Dremel or die grinder or whatever and you know, clean the inside of the pipe up just a little bit, but then we can go ahead and get this welded to the pipe. Nice little wiggle, break that tack. Look at that. Should be nice and easy to trace now with the plasma, and go ahead and burn that out.
Using, I mean, it was a little bit of you know, testing different stuff with the water pumps, but I think that right there, it's going to make it be a million times better. The fit in there is perfect.
All right, so we kind of jumped ahead a couple steps here. I already had the downpipe kind of made up or whatever, and I wanted to get that done before mounting the wastegate so that everything flowed together nicely, and we, you know, got a better idea how the gate needed to be positioned, judging by the downpipe. Yeah, we got gates all mounted. We just got the bellows done into the downpipe, so 95% of the hard stuff is done. The only other part that's going to be a little tricky is once we get down a little further, we're going to snake between the frame and the bell housing, still leaving plenty of room for the starter, the tranny cooler lines, and the crank position wires. But other than that, once we get down and level with the frame, it's just straight shot just about out the rear. We have to add hangers and the muffler, and we got another set of bellows further down, just so that you know, there's a little bit of flex and everything, and that the entire movement of the exhaust isn't a burden on the turbo. But yeah, the rest of that, we'll just get this thing up in the air and do it all on the lift.